Hello, Andra. Thank you for agreeing to participate in this interview about Wardley Mapping. Could you introduce yourself and say what's your relationship with Wardley Mapping?
Ah, Hi, Chris, and thank you very much for having me first. So I'm Andra Sonea. I work for FinTech OS, which is a startup delivering software for financial services. And I'm also a researcher at the University of Warwick. I was introduced to Wardley Maps at a domain-driven design conference in Amsterdam by Cyril Martea. And that conference, it's a very interesting gathering of minds, I would say. And people are very curious. What are you working on? What do you do? And in such an exchange, Cyril told me, you think in this way, and somebody put a method around this type of thinking. You should go and read about it. So I started exploring Wardley Maps and the concepts and the tools and how they fit to what I was doing before I had the chance to meet Simon. And then, it evolved. So this happened probably 3-4 years ago. And since then I used Wardley Maps, let's say in a more traditional way, with application to a business or with the intention to figure out what to develop next, or how you can put together a bank, for example, where you look at pieces which are commodity, and who does them, and then you need this, and then either assembling or disassembling things. But the way I use Wardley Maps nowadays, it's actually at the intersection of my business experience or technical experience and academic world. I want to bring to light or to make visible how banking services work. And I was surprised to discover that this is not very well known. And I decompose it, and I have various layers of decomposing using Wordly Map, and I find it very useful, both for academics and business people, as a artifact which aggregates and aggregate people around it and makes people collaborate and discuss.
Okay. Could you share an example of a story in which Wardley Mapping was used, and tell a couple of words about the benefits that you got from the process and from the approach?
The outcome. So yes, one of the topics which is very dear to me, or I'm very passionate about, is highlighting how the industry changes, the financial services changes, and I mean that part of financial services which is customer facing and does services for people, which I see mostly as an infrastructure with endpoints. So it needs to be ubiquitous, and accessible to people. And this is changing in fundamental ways. But as all the infrastructures, this is invisible. And it becomes usually visible only through force. So I use Wordly Map there, and by doing it and decomposing, what do you need in order to do a payment to a friend if you do not have a mobile, and the friend is not near you. You know,
which is common
so
nowadays.
Yeah, exactly. So where do you go? What type of entity can enable that type of thing? And when you break it, in little pieces, in a very similar and simple way as the original example of Simon with what do you need to make a cup of tea? Something like that. What do you need to make a payment? You realize that you need a car, you need petrol, you need, and this is a way to highlight, this was a way for me to highlight the cost of a financial transaction for somebody who doesn't operate in our, urban fancy world where we have on our phone 10 ways to make a payment. So that is an output, like highlighting individual financial services. What do you need to do if you need to deposit money? How many? Where do you go? and how this changes with the location. I have to say that my sub maps from Wardley Maps are usually geographic maps. So in my academic work, I do computational urban science, and I I zoom in, from a certain point, and I say, okay, and here we are, and this is what is going on. So yeah.
So that sounds extremely interesting, and it actually opens my eyes to a very important aspect, which I was completely missing, is that the infrastructure is important, and because of the worldly perspective, we rarely think about the infrastructure, right? Because it's invisible, it's somewhere there, but we don't care for it. Sometimes it's very important if the primary or the easy way of doing things is not there. You have to fall back on some less efficient mechanism, and then suddenly everything which you have or which you have to put in place becomes extremely, extremely important and probably expensive. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So where the Wardley map came into this is, when you decompose such a basic operation of making a payment, and if you are, of course, everything is contextual. So I talk about Europe because this is what I'm familiar with. I wouldn't comment on environments I'm not familiar with. But we are in Europe. And in all European countries, these operations are considered standard. You are excluded from financial services if you want to be excluded. No, it's not it's a small, that's a perception. When you look closer and you do the map, you do the maps, you realize that the reality is very different. The reality is very different. And this type of infrastructure, which is invisible, it's invisible because it was always there. It was always there because infrastructure function on longer periods of time. So we assume them to be always there, but they're not. It happens to be at the end of its life cycle. So in Simon's diagrams, he has also the S curve of innovation, which he overlaps with the phases, from Genesis to commodity. We are somewhere there. These services are commodity, but they are at the end of life kind of thing. And that's, for me, one of the most interesting and disruptive points that you could observe. But as it happens, disruption is also painful. But the Wardley map helps me exactly there to highlight. You assume, yes, it is a commodity, but yes, it's also disappearing. And what is going on now at the end of commodity? because one way to use a Wardley map is to always focus on the left hand side, what is new, what I need, and you push things on the other side thinking, oh, that's not interesting. But when those things go out of the map,
exactly, yeah.
Another curve starts, and it starts but it usually not visible. Otherwise, we will be probably very wealthy people. But
yeah, I mean, that's a really important problem and challenge, especially in public services, isn't it? That there is the infrastructure which is at the end of life, and I think it's all over the world, right? We consider it to be always present, but that's not actually true because it will be gone. You need to be talking and new approach. Fabulous stuff. So I wonder, are you making your work public, or are you showing it to government, or trying to make?
I do. Even it's somehow in small pieces, because in academia, when you publish, it has to be, it has to have a beginning and end. It takes a lot of time to put something in a form. But whenever I have the opportunity to speak about such pieces of work, I do, and I happily share. And usually, if I publish something, I publish everything: the code, the data, the concept. And of course, the maps as well. I hope this time will come soon.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
If you could give one advice to newcomers coming to Wardley Mapping, what would it be?
It would be to not to learn in abstract, but to learn by applying to a problem they care about. And even if in their business, let's say, they are not in a position to apply it, or they must have something they care about. It could be anything in the public life. A problem. So to me, that way of thinking and structuring a situation can be applicable to many situations. And of course, you can apply it to your business to the level that it's visible to you. Then collaborating or exposing that map to others, it's essential. Explaining it to somebody. What do you think? This is how I think about this. This is where I think things are moving, changing, and from this interaction with others, the map evolves. And so progressing through learning, reading, of course, Simon's Medium book which was published on Medium, but also listening to others who use the maps, what they do with them. It's continuous learning. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much for your time and for your patience with me. I trust everyone will be very pleased to see this knowledge review. Thank you again, Andra.
You're welcome.
If you would like to share your way of using Wardley Maps, don't hesitate. I'm more than happy to record an interview with you. Cheers!